Okay, so welcome to part 2 for the A2, and main focus of the next bit of work is pretty much to get the engine management light working and off. So this is important because in the UK MOT, past a certain vehicle age, you're not allowed to have the engine management light not working or showing for the MOT. And this particular car, I think, is about 8 days too new for that. So if it was 8 days older, it wouldn't apply. This obviously hasn't mattered in previous MOTs because it hasn't shown up before when I think it was still an issue. But with an MOT retest being about £25, and then you would only have, say, I think it's 10 working days to solve that issue. I don't want to run into that problem, so we're going to get that sorted now. That's probably the hardest thing to do, and that brings us into the main issue with these that we're going to try and solve in one go. So first of all, engine management light. Part A of that is the fact that that's usually caused by the lower inlet manifold flaps, which is what we're going to look to try and resolve. Probably the reason why the light is off in the first place. And second part is a coolant pipe, which people tend to call a death pipe. It's just a plastic pipe that connects between the water pump and the thermostat housing. To get that on and off, typically you've got to strip down most of the engine anyway, so we're going to do that whilst we're in that position. And the main reason why it's a problem is because these engines tend to run around 110 degrees Celsius, so hotter than usual. A normal car about 90 degrees, and there's a certain amount of degradation of the plastic you'll get, which I guess the concept is that it can fail unexpectedly and quite, I say dramatically. I would say 100 degrees is boiling point under normal atmospheric conditions. Because this is an engine with a pressurized cooling system, it's not going to boil, but then if the pipe does break, I guess there's a risk that it will boil very quickly, which you don't want that. So we're pretty much going to be stripping up everything back here and coming down the back and doing all of the thermostat and everything whilst we're there. So like many engine jobs on the A2, you've got to move that air duct out of the way. On this, we've got to take off all the inlet manifolds, so the mass airflow sensor in the throttle body will unbolt, move out of the way. There's an EGR valve underneath that, and then it's the hex bolts for the upper inlet manifold. And for this job, you've got to get underneath, which will show you in a minute, and undo a Jubilee clip. There's a hose going to the back of it, and you've also got to remove the engine mount on the engine side. So just jacking it up with a piece of wood, move the engine forward, it will give you enough clearance, and that should let us see the lower inlet manifold with the flaps there, and they should all move together like this and all be facing towards the engine. One of them's facing away. It's not even physically possible for it to do that itself, so I have no idea why someone's done that or how someone's done that, but it just means that that lower inlet manifold now is toast, so yeah, we can't fix that. With that removed, we can see the injectors and the ports for the head and the death pipe in plastic there just underneath. So we're going to undo the thermostat housing, remove the clip from the thermostat housing to the pipe, which we want to keep onto that because that doesn't come with either of the new parts, and it is important. So this is it removed, and then we can move the pipe from the water pump side now. It's just a push fit, so it will wiggle free. This one was a bit damaged, and I don't know if I've done that or if it was on its way out and I've caught it just in time, but nonetheless, new one's going on. And the thermostat housing itself, it's obviously new, I did put a little bit of liquid gasket on this just because the side of the head had a little bit of pitting, so I wanted to put a bit on braces on that. And then it's just a case of lining up the new coolant pipe at the back, death pipe, with thermostat housing. Took a little bit of fiddling, but we got there in the end. So by this point, I don't know if you can see, but we've put another decent lower inlet manifold on, and we're just reconnecting all the hoses back up, and then the upper inlet manifold go back on there as well, and then the high pressure fuel pump and the fuel lines as well. this is just an opportunity to say that apparently 98.5% of the people who watch aren't subscribed, so if you do that for me, that would be really good, because I've only got like 500, so I need more, please. So here I'm pressurizing the cooling system. I want to make sure that everything's holding the pressure before I bother to fill back up with coolant. It's cleaner to do it this way. And I did find a few leaks on the old spring clips around the T-section of the cooling pipe, so I replaced them with the Jubilee clips, and then testing over and over again, just making sure to hold pressure. So by this point I thought I'd done it all and it was all ready, but then I went to start the car and back to square one, a fuel leak. So I think the cause for this was one of the new O-rings for the injectors, of which you need 8 of them. I think it must have got caught or snagged or something. So I put fresh engine oil on the O-rings just to sort of lubricate them up, so that when the inlet manifold went back on, that it was all seated properly, and I double checked this with the camera. So then that went all back together, and no more fuel leak, but the new lower inlet manifold had a flap that was catching on cylinder 4. As you can see, I probably should have made more effort cleaning this up, because I think that could have been a factor here. So took it all apart again, cleaned up inside that area, put it all back together. And so with this reassembly, we are finally done. Or not. So now getting an error for set point not reached, which suggests the ECU's telling the flaps to open a certain amount, and then it's reporting back that they aren't, and they don't appear to be catching. So that bit was all fine. So as per the code, we're going to look at the N316 valve. This is on the side of the upper inlet manifold. This controls the vacuum. So when I pop this hose off now, you should hear it release. So it basically chooses when that happens to allow the flaps to move up and down. So I'm taking this one off, and I'm going to connect it to a 12-volt battery, and what I'm expecting to hear is a click from the valve itself when the positive and negatives attached to it onto a spare 12-volt battery, and then sort of connecting. Of course, there's nothing from that, so it seems to confirm what I already thought, and that the valve for some reason has completely died, maybe from previous bodging, who knows. So that one's going to go in the bin, and we've got another spare one to test instead. This will be the exact same method, just going to connect it up to the battery in the same way with my spare loom, and then confirm that it makes its clicking noise. Which you can hopefully just about hear there. It works, so we can replace this and put it back on. So now I'm just going to make sure the flaps work by putting a vacuum onto the actual diaphragm and then checking on the diagnostics to see that the reading changes as expected with the position of the flaps. With VCDS you can also do the output tests, which will move the valve up and down for you, as you can see here. And then went through the adaptation for the EGR, the throttle body and the valves themselves, and then starting the car and everything seemed fine. But of course the original issue still exists there, that the engine management light doesn't come on when the ignition comes on, so it should be appearing just to the left of the airbag one on there. So that's the next task, and the main thing really, obviously first stage to make sure it doesn't come on, and the second stage to make the light work properly. So just separating all of this, and again the bodges continue, but someone had snapped off the actual mounts for the instrument cluster in their attempts to bodge all of this. So I'm going to take all this apart and bond it back together. But this really isn't the tip of the iceberg for the stuff we now have to look at. I wouldn't suggest you do this on the floor on the gravel like I'm doing, but nonetheless, there's just two little torque screws that hold the cluster together. So if you undo those, there is some plastic clips around the circumference, and then the front of the cluster will come off. That's with the chrome dials and the little window plastics. So as you can see here, when I lift up the cluster, it's not like an old school one with a bulb, because there'll be surface mounted diodes on these, but these are the lengths that people go to do these things. So when we lift it up, you can see there's a load of like tissue paper with some black like mastic or black glue. So not only did they stuff tissue paper in where the diode is, but also smeared the black glue on the back of the actual sort of transparent part where the engine management light symbol should shine through. So this wasn't fun to undo. Better angle of it here. Pretty horrible. So once all that had been finally scraped out of the way, I managed to get it a little bit clearer there, but then I just had to use some like makeup remover to get rid of the rest from underneath to make it fully operable again. So now when I turn on the ignition, we've got the engine management light back, and then when we start the car, it goes out. So that's a success from that point of view, but a lot of bodges to uncover along the way, so it's kind of scary really when you see that sort of stuff, that you do wonder what else that person's touched on the car. So it seemed to be a success. Scanned it again after it'd been running, and got what I wanted to see, no fault codes. I then run the car up to temperature and just double checked all the cooling system with a thermal camera to make sure cold spots were airlocks. But then I did notice after that one more code came back up, which is an air leak. But I know what that is, and I think I'm going to tackle that in the next video along with some other bits. So if you like this and you want to see the next part, then be sure to click like and subscribe and all the rest of it. I'm sure you know what to do. See you next time.
We can leave it all behind. Just breathe and feel alive.